Hello, everybody. Happy Friday. Dave Neal here, stand-up comic, host of Bachelor Recaps. Now, let's jump right into this. We've been talking about reality, Steve, probably too much, but there's been a lot to sift and go through here with regards to reality. Steve, his apologies to Demi Burnett, contestants like Christina Schulman and Tayshia Adams, and others, Jade, Jenna Cooper, speaking out about his shoddy journalism and how he kind of uses his personal relationships to leverage information with them. So I think it's only appropriate to hear Reality Steve's full apology. He wrote it on his blog. I'm going to go and read the whole thing. There's other news organizations that piece together quotes here and there, but why not, if he wrote the whole thing, listen to it. So I will read it, and I will play first a clip from his podcast, and then we'll read his statement.
To address some of the people that were on the show and start bringing them on next week. I didn't find that out till today. So we are going to move forward, and I'm just going to talk about a few things, namely what I wrote about today on my website. For those that have been aware of everything that's been going on the last week, I
was called out.
Had kind of stuff all over the place. I had an apology to Demi on Twitter. I had an IG live that I did with Ashley Spivey that is still on my IGTV on my Instagram. And then the first, 12 minutes of last week's podcast was me addressing the Demi situation. It was in 3 different places. It probably confused people of where did I respond to what thing. So what I did today was I released a statement, whatever you want to call it, where I went over everything, and I even put it in sections so you know what my response is to each thing. What I would ask of you is to please go to my site today to read everything I want to cover. I'm not going to do it in the podcast because then it's in 2 places. Well, where did you say it? It was podcast? Is it written? It's now all written. It's not going anywhere. It is my response to what has happened the last week because it was all over the place last week. IG Live, Twitter, Instagram. It's all in one place now, and I really, trust me, I've thought about a lot of things in the last week, including the mistakes that I've made since the Demi tweet and the Demi story broke out. So please take the time to read that and just know it comes from a good place. And, the timing, and the reason I say that is because when it was, this is something that I did write today one thing that I wrote today that I will talk about in this podcast was everything happened rather quickly last week. Ashley and I did our live from 7 to 8 Central Time, and then we started a new live, and that's when people informed me, hey, Steve, what is this that Demi's tweeting about? And those that watched the live saw me break away from Ashley, go to my computer, skim what Demi said, got the gist of it, came back, we stopped the live, and within 20 minutes I had responded to Demi on Twitter with an apology, and it wasn't a good one. And I admit that. You'll see me admit that today. It just wasn't good. And it's because I needed time to process that more. I should not have responded in 20 minutes. I shouldn't even have responded the next morning because that, was around, I think 8:47 was when I sent that apology to Demi. Later on that night was when I even started recording last week's podcast. I didn't start recording with Casey Campbell until 10:45 my time. I recorded that interview, and then I recorded my open, which was the 12 minutes dedicated to the Demi stuff because it had just happened 2 hours earlier. I'm like, oh, great, I can attack this in, tomorrow's podcast. I needed more time than 2 hours. I certainly needed more than 30 minutes before I sent out that tweet to Demi apologizing because it wasn't a good apology. Worded it wrong. It didn't have the effect that I thought it had. And I've made a lot of mistakes. Absolutely. And, I'm sorry for that. You'll see in my statement today, I go over everything. And I don't shy away from everything, and I want to explain to you people where I'm at with things that are going on, and the things that Becca said, and the things that Demi brought up. There was something else brought up over the weekend, I believe it was, by Christina Schulman, who went on her Instagram story. Now, granted, it didn't have anything to do with my past writings, and it didn't have anything to do with any sort of, creepy sexual behavior that that Demi was talking about, but I do address it briefly. I do address it though. So for those that don't even know what she said, maybe you weren't following her. I took the screenshots from her Instagram story so you can read what she said, and then I respond to it accordingly because I want to get it all out there. There's nothing to hide from here.
Let's just get right into it. He says there's nothing to hide from. I actually love this. I mean, don't we wish Colton Underwood would put together a full apology with screen grabs? And I apologize for it. Wouldn't it be nice if other people did this? So I'm not going to give Reality Steve any extra credit than is due, but he is owning up to a lot of his issues, understanding he apologized too quickly. You know how it is. If you don't apologize right away, people start blowing you up. Why aren't you apologizing? If you apologize too quickly, you don't get out what you want to say. It's okay to readjust your apology. Take this from anyone in a relationship. Sometimes you get your apology out and you realize you missed things. You want to improve on others. It's called evolving. It's called moving forward. This won't affect, I feel like, any public perception of his credibility being shot with regards to the opinions and the sharing of misinformation with regards to past contestants. But at the very least, it is worth hearing what he has to say. So he does an Instagram Live with Ashley Spivey. And again, this is all on his site, realitysteve.com. Let's just read it. I'm going to read it, folks. Sit back, get your laundry done, ignore your kid's t-ball game, whatever it is you're doing, enjoy it, and I'm going to read this for you in its entirety. It's probably like 8 to 10 minutes, just a guess. Let's see. I don't want to repeat everything I said in it, but I did want to add a few things about the horrible things I wrote in the past on my blog, which have all since been deleted. In the beginning, when I would write that way, I never really felt connected to it, but it worked. People ate it up. Unfortunately, back then, that's what we were doing. I mentioned sites like Perez Hilton, The Dirty, Delisted, The Superficial, etc. I was just an extension of those since they were much bigger than me. It was part of the culture that I absolutely was a part of and contributed to, but I honestly never felt great about it. For a good while now, I have been in the process of changing and moving away from that because I began to identify that wasn't who I was. I didn't have to do that and write that way and degrade women to keep numbers up on websites. I made changes, stopped covering the show in that way, stopped focusing on people's looks, and my readership didn't change. On some seasons, it was increasing. So seeing it in real time, when I let go of those things, people still read and supported it. I didn't have to write like a 25-year-old frat boy to get people to read my stuff. Over the last few years, I completely moved away from that, and you, the audience, were still there. That was my aha or proverbial light bulb moment where I realized I didn't need to do that anymore. Then when I felt like time had moved on, society had changed, and I didn't have to talk that way, then I could focus on other things. This is how people grow and learn and change as people with feedback. I've been actively picking up on that for a while. Did I hurt people in the process? Absolutely. And as I notice these trends, I'm continuing to do more work on myself. You know, real quickly, I agree with that. I've also over-sexualized sexual innuendos, things on my recaps with people's looks and commenting on the superficiality of it all. You don't need that. We've moved on from that. So I agree with you there. These contestants serve themselves up on a silver platter going on reality TV to be judged. If you want to know where it comes from, that's where. The fact people are talking about this now, I'm not denying the impact of it then, however. I'm not ignorant. I'm someone who's in the continuous process of learning, and I take all of this very seriously. I am listening. I want to do better, and I'm a guy that wants to do things right. I can only stand to benefit from this teachable moment. It's opened my eyes to another layer that I have to learn from, which is this power dynamic that Becca and Demi both brought up last week. Call me ignorant, call me naive. It was never something that I ever thought about with the people from this franchise that I was friends and or acquaintances with. Because yes, some people I'm way closer to and talk to, text, FaceTime more often than others. This power dynamic was just never something that I ever knowingly thought about or held over anyone's head. That is the God's honest truth. And I do believe that what people think, oh yeah, I'm just a cool guy. You don't realize it's because your dad has the liquor store that gets you free booze. No, they just like me for who I am. You know, like I totally get it. This is a continual learning process for me. I've learned a lot about myself and my behavior over the last week. I'm not perfect, nor will everything I say be perfect. And the beginning of last week's podcast was a perfect example. When speaking about this power dynamic that Becca and Demi had brought up, I needed to give myself more time to process what they were saying before speaking on it. And for that, I'm truly sorry. Everything happened so fast last week. I should have taken more time. I wish I could take that beginning part of the podcast back because while I thought I knew what point I wanted to get across, the impact landed way differently than I thought based on the reaction. Should have thought that out more, and I wish I could take that back. I think he's saying the fact that Becca was getting off on calling him out. The only thing I had was that this was important and I wanted to address it immediately instead of looking like I was ignoring it. But it's out there and I own it. Just know I did not go down a laundry list of any of my friends' acquaintances from this franchise and confront them, asking them if they were only friends with me out of fear of me writing something negative about them. I addressed my behavior with them and never made anything confrontational. I was never planning on being confrontational to begin with, but going back and listening to what I said last week, yeah, I could see where people thought that's what I was going to do. My mistake, and I own that. Demi Burnett. When I said everything happened so fast last week, I want to explain. By no means is this an excuse. I'm not excusing what I said to Demi. I'm just telling you how, when everything came down, and why I should have taken longer to process what happened before opening my mouth without thinking. Ashley and I did our live from 7 to 8 p.m. Central Time last Wednesday. We started a second one right at 8 p.m., and that's when people in the comments told me to look at Demi's tweets, calling me out for a phone call where I told her about a sex dream I had about her 8 months prior. We signed off that second live at around 9:15 Central Time. Don't remember the exact time, but I felt we'd gone around 10 to 15 minutes. It was then that I tweeted this not even 30 minutes later at Demi. Wanted to address my past writings that were brought to light again today on a podcast. There was no excuse for them. I'm embarrassed I thought that way. I'm embarrassed I wrote it, and ever since I've done whatever I could to change that line of thinking. I had no idea at the time that conversation made you feel that way. I am apologizing now, knowing how uncomfortable I made you feel. I crossed boundaries I didn't think at the time I was crossing. I did not know this until today, so for that, I hope you can accept my apology. All right. Keep going. Deep breath. Wrong. Just wrong. And I realize that now. And then I didn't record the beginning of last week's podcast or the interview with Casey, for that matter, till after 10:30 p.m. Central Time Wednesday night, as it went up the next morning. I definitely needed more than 2 hours to inhale all this before speaking, and I should have taken that. When it happened during our Instagram Live, I was totally caught off guard, and I wanted to respond quickly so I didn't look like I was trying to duck responsibility or not care about her feelings. I don't want to make somebody feel that way. I had no idea I did that. I'm not that type of person. I don't revel in someone's discomfort, despite what some may think. When I saw that reflection, I didn't say, please tell me that's not who they think I am. I said, that's not me. And unfortunately, the latter is the place I responded from. Had I taken a moment, I could have said I need to respond simply to her feelings, put mine to the side. This is not about me. This is about her. I totally get that. It's a good lesson to learn when it comes to communication and apology. It's not what you meant to do. It's how it was received. You could mean to be a good guy, but someone could receive it as something else, and you need to find out what it is someone received you as, and that's where you attack the apology from. So that a good lesson learned, albeit, a day late. Demi was an acquaintance. We hadn't been talking for even a month. I don't know her deeply. She doesn't know me deeply, which makes the conversation I had with her all the more cringy, 100%. But I'm not someone who wants to make a girl or anyone feel uncomfortable. When that mirror was held up to my face, Demi releasing it, I saw something I hadn't seen before. I can sit here and rack my brain to give a reason why I thought it was appropriate to share that story with Demi, but it doesn't matter. It's an ongoing process for me right now. At the time the Demi situation happened, of course, this is him calling her to tell her he had a sex dream about her and asked her to keep it private. I was in a relationship. I also don't have a track record of cheating on partners, going behind people's backs, etc. Not something I can prove to you without rolling out interviews with every ex-girlfriend I've ever had. I'm just being as honest as I can be here. The conversation with Demi, however cringy, was not an attempt to get her in bed. It was not an attempt to sexually manipulate her. It was me having a, hey, that's crazy conversation with someone who a couple weeks earlier said on our podcast she thought I hated her. I immediately DM'd Demi when I heard that podcast, first ever contact we'd had, and told her that while I didn't agree with everything she said and did on Colton's season and on Paradise, I didn't hate her at all, and invited her to come on my podcast to talk about it. She responded by thanking me for clarifying and reaching out, and that she'd follow up with me on that offer. Clearly that never happened, nor did I go on hers, but we now know why, and she had every right to not engage. I really have to admit, I'm very glad she finally confronted me with how I made her feel, because now I can use that to learn from it, not only about individual interactions with females, but also this power dynamic that she brought to light. I don't want to operate that way. I've never wanted to operate that way. I never thought I was operating that way. These contestants already know they're in a fishbowl by going on the show. To feel like I'm holding some power over them, I do not want to be seen that way. I don't want to make anybody feel that way, and to my knowledge, I have never tried to wield any power over someone to manipulate them. That's one of those things. It's like I said, it's not what you feel you're doing, it's how they feel. And unfortunately, there was this monopoly sort of spoilers, of dish environment that created a scenario in which he did control the codes to the nuclear weapons. Christina did an IG Live saying that he made her life a living hell. One of the things that I've learned from this situation is that going forward, I'm not going to have any sort of personal relationship with these contestants. So this is the big takeaway. He's basically saying I'm no longer going to try to be friends in any which way whatsoever with these contestants. Because even the times I've tried to speak to them in a looking out for you way, helping them maybe avoid disaster, it backfires more often than not. I need to draw clearer lines that these are people I'm reporting on, not people I have friendships with. Yeah, I mean, look, you're not friends with them, and any thoughts of looking out for someone is always kind of weird. It's like, let them make their own mistakes, you know? I've reached out to contestants in the same manner that I reached out to Christina, where it has been beneficial. However, those times where I've tried to do something good and it's backfired, I've come to realize I just need to let people do what they're going to do. I don't think I realized how the setup with this as contestants and me as reporting actually prevents any real social relationships from happening. That's a good point. I'm going to read that again. I don't think I realized how the setup with them as contestants and me as reporting actually prevents any real social relationship from happening. The power dynamic that I'm now aware of prevents genuine behavior, meaning I can't be sure if someone actually wants to talk to me or not. The good is not outweighing the bad in terms of the impact. I've learned that my intent doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is how people felt in the aftermath and what they took away from it. I can't operate out of good intent anymore and hope that's going to be what sticks. Yeah, maybe 10 years ago you were the guy in your early 30s that was having conversations with them, but now you've kind of graduated into a different mold of what you are. And I think embrace that, evolve from that, get to the strict journalism, get to your blog, but don't, involve the personal, don't skew it with the personal relationship. The Christina situation is a perfect example of that. Due to the sensitive nature of what I spoke about with her, I will refrain from commenting any further on what she said. I reached out to her as well after seeing this and personally apologized for how I made her feel. Moving forward, I think this rounds it up to the end here. Moving forward. So what am I going to do going forward? How am I going to make sure this doesn't happen again? I've been working with a professional for a long time, and I've been in an ongoing process of moving away from who I once was. I struggle with my process. Clearly, I'm a very private person when it comes to my personal life. You know me, I just don't put it out there too much. Maybe I should have been more of an open book. Could have possibly helped people understand me more. But I'm not the person here that was victimized. I'm not the person that needs to be listened to. I'm not the person that's been hurt. Do I like knowing I hurt somebody else? Absolutely not. So, if you were to ask me how I feel about this, shitty, horrible, awful, every bad adjective you can think of, I felt that way for the last week, as I should. But this is for me to deal with on my own. I want to say that although my first apology was rushed, not well written, and interpreted poorly, I have not been angry towards Demi or Becca. I have not acted out of anger. I've let this whole process open me up to a deeper understanding of what's happening. I've welcomed constructive comments, not the ones saying you're a piece of shit, a future rapist, sexual predator, and every other name you can think of, because if you're asking yourself that, I'm asking myself the same thing. It has kept me up at night. As much as one person saying this is the way they felt is upsetting, the thought that there could be others unknown to me is even more upsetting. And everything that I've tried to do in responding to all of these things, I've tried to show an open mind and a willingness to have this conversation, to hear people's side and people I've interacted with. That's the most that I can do, which is to try to say that I want to learn from my past mistakes. In closing, I just want to say this. I am a developing person. I'm a work in progress. Seeing that mirror being held up to me this last week has been eye-opening. No other way to put it. I have a choice to turn away in anger and ignorance or man up and face it. I feel like I'm facing it. I'm eagerly opened up to this process. It's not easy to sit back and hear people carving me up without offering me suggestions. I have no choice but to move forward and try to be better. There's going to be a point where we stop talking about this. This is not what you come to this site or my podcast for, which is to hear from me working through my process. However, I want to let all of you know that the process is continual and it is ongoing. Just because I'm not talking about it every episode or addressing every tweet coming at me or responding to every email sent to me, the process is ongoing. I've personally reached out and attempted to make amends for the things I've said and done. If these women now are good with telling their truths, that gives them a level of closure with this. I am open to and have been actively trying to offer them an additional level of closure by personally apologizing. Not in public, not on air. I've reached out to let them know I've heard them, their feelings are valid, and I'm actively trying to take their experiences and learn from them. And that's my way of acknowledging these circumstances, their feelings, and taking responsibility for my actions. I'm trying to be better from this experience because the question is always, how do we move forward? We all should be asking ourselves, when we as a nation hear women come forward with their comments and feelings, how do we show we believe them? They should be given priority. But we also have to ask ourselves, what is that way forward? Now, how do we learn from it? Simply talking about them is a level of healing. The question then becomes how do we as a society learn from them and integrate these stories? And that comes from the process of interacting with them, which is what I'm seeking. I know that I will never please everyone. And some people that read this today will dismiss it, shit on it, not believe it, etc. I can't concern myself with that. This is my truth right now. I'm going to have a better understanding now of the boundaries of not only women from this franchise, but in general. I want to use this as a learning experience and be better moving forward. There is no other choice. Thanks for taking the time to read this. All right, folks, there you have it. That's Reality Steve's statement on all that went down. And, he said, for people talking about it, if they could offer him any advice. I'm not in his situation, but what I would say is, you can't continuously address every tweet that's going to come at you. You've got a statement you put together. I'm sure you will edit it in certain ways moving forward. You'll add on to it. Maybe other stories will come out. I don't believe you've, you have a setup here where you don't have a boss per se. And the only way that you can be held accountable and learn and change is to hear people's feedback. And it's starting to come out. Like I said before, the levees were breaking, and it slaps you upside the head, and you realize a lot of your past work and even current situations are evolving. And isn't that complicated? And isn't that who we are as humans? So while it'd be easy for me to pile on, honestly, my true thoughts are, which I can only speak my truth, is that this is a man who, while he's operated from places of being a shock jock to thinking he's the cool guy that everyone likes, we can definitely, or at least I can definitely see a scenario in which he believed that. And he believed that he was part of the tribe. Because isn't that all we're trying to be, is part of a tribe? We're all trying to fit in. We don't want to be ostracized. It's the probably worst feeling you can have as a human, to be kicked out of the tribe. So his way of carving out and being a part of that tribe was the communication with the leads, the popular characters, having them on his podcast. And of course, that's his business model. So moving forward, he's going to have to do a good job of separating his spoilers from his opinions and his blogs and all that, and try to keep his way out of people's personal lives, and at least now understand that these aren't relationships built off of the social dynamic, but off of a sort of a power dynamic where contestants are trying to get under his good opinions. And we'll just have to see how it goes more moving forward. But I'm curious to see what you guys think. Leave a comment below and let me know. I know my reaction isn't the sexiest reaction, but I can kind of understand it. In some ways, I can understand the thought that he was somebody that people didn't perceive him to be. He thought he was one thing and people saw him as something else, and that caused some problems and other issues. Sort of, while in hindsight, they all stack up like a pretty big evidence log of issues against him, and it is. But over a time, it's not like it's not like he's got the most sinister of motivations. We see him as an adult man running his blog, hating on people, and I get that. I always try to look at like the boy within people, the child, the child's spirit. And you wonder, is this just a guy who thought this is how he had to carve his way out to belong? I don't know. Leave a comment. Let me know what you guys think. And if you want, I got other content out here, folks. My vlog came out yesterday. Do-it-yourself patio setup. Tasha and I did a new backyard patio. Plus, I have a throwback quarantine blog, my COVID birthday from last year. This year, if you want to follow my social media, I will be making a COVID vaccine cake. I'm making a syringe cake. It's going to be amazing. I'm making it later today. And then, of course, I got my vlog about getting vaccinated with Tasha. And spoiler alert, we don't have genetically mutated bodies yet, so we're doing okay. And, of course, if you want real behind the scenes, I got my Patreon, Patreon.com/thesap. It is a private podcast. I recorded it at 6 a.m. this morning. Had my morning coffee over there. You can listen to some real behind-the-scenes info about my YouTube channel, the analytics, the growth, how we got from 2,000 subscribers to 30,000 subscribers in just 1 year, and so much more. So anyway, thank you guys so much for watching and keeping an open mind and being and practicing great media literacy as we sift between rumors and gossip and truth and fact. Don't forget, it's Friday. Call your mom, tell her you love her, and I'll see you guys later on. Bye now. Thank you all for all the birthday wishes. I appreciate it.